Okay, I think we are set and ready to go. Let some people filter their way into the live if we're on board. Let me know you're here. You're in the chat. Say hello. And we'll get going here in just a second. A lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We have so much to talk about. Sent it out in an email today, but we'll go over the rundown. There's just a bunch to discuss. And like I said, Utah politics are popping right now. Okay, a few people saying hello in the chat. Nathan Detroit, evening to you. He's watching on Twitch, and Emma Jolo on YouTube. Glad to have you all on board. We're also live on Instagram and TikTok tonight. So, Christy Flower on TikTok says, "Hey Brian, hey, evening, Christy. Hope everybody's staying cool. 90 some degrees today. Yeah, that's normal. That's absolutely normal in May. I think I got I was looking back over some old posts. You know how you get the memories on Facebook and everything. Like 10 years ago, I posted that it was 70 degrees on this day. That's not alarming at all. Totally normal. Nothing to see here. Okay. Let's talk about what's happening in Utah politics, because there is a lot. Things are popping off, and I want to know what you have to hear about it. I'm here to explain some stuff to you and give you my thoughts on what is happening. Off the bat, right off the top, this is What the Heck is Happening in Utah Politics. I'm Brian Schott. I'm the publisher and managing editor of Utah Political Watch. You'll find us online at utahpolitics.news. I am an independent political journalist, and I've been covering Utah politics for more than 25 years, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I'm here to help you understand what's going on in Utah politics so you know what you're talking about. I think over in England they say it's you're not like a thicky dum-dum, I believe is the phrase that I've heard. So that's what I'm here to help you with tonight. And there's a lot going on. If you have questions, if you have comments, leave them in the chat, and I will get to them forthwith as soon as I can. But I want to hear from you. But the first thing I want to talk about tonight is John Curtis exploring a run for governor. And I think it's a little bit more than exploring. I think he's going to do it. It makes a lot of sense that he would do it. It's a free run for him. He does not have to give up his seat in the Utah Senate. I had not heard his name as a possible candidate for governor, but the moment that Sam Benson of Politico reported this, and good job on him reporting this story, it makes a ton of sense. And I think that he immediately becomes the front runner. Because what is the one thing that matters the most at this stage? It's name ID. It's 100% name ID. It's not how much money you have, although Curtis will have as much money as he needs. And we'll go over some of that because the rules for fundraising in the state are much easier than the rules for fundraising for a federal race. Essentially, he'll be able to take he'll be able to take any amount from anybody, and he's got some big funders behind him. He had some big funders behind him when he ran for Senate 2 years ago in 2024. There's a billionaire out of North Carolina who's interested in the environment, but more from a Republican point of view. He was a major financial player in supporting John Curtis's run. He had to create a super PAC the last time around, which were the federal rules. Here in Utah, he can just give as much money as he wants to John Curtis. So Curtis will not be hurting for money. So he'll have name ID and he will have money. And so he immediately is a big contender for this position. And that really, I think, was a sort of a shock to the system for the rest of the field. Because if you look at the people who are looking at it, you've got Jason Chaffetz, who has been raising a lot of money to possibly run for governor in 2028. Deidre Henderson is another name that I've heard. Mike Schultz, he's going to run. The problem for Mike Schultz is he has money, but nobody knows who the hell he is. He does not have name ID. And so Curtis immediately becomes a top contender, if not the front runner for this race. And that would shake a lot of things up because we have had several decades of pretty much the same group of people running the state. You went from John Huntsman, and then it was Gary Herbert, who was John Huntsman's lieutenant governor, and he became the governor. And then Gary Herbert's lieutenant governor, Spencer Cox, becomes the governor. And if you break that up, it's gonna change a lot of stuff because there are people in the Cox administration who have been there forever, and you would see a whole bunch of new people coming into government. So it would shake things up. I'm not saying that Curtis is going to win, but I think he's going to do it. I don't think you put out this trial balloon and then not do it. So I think Curtis is going to do it. And don't underestimate him because he has every time he's run, everyone dismisses him. And he wins. When Jason Chaffetz resigned unexpectedly in 2017, John Curtis, who was then the mayor of Provo, jumped into that race, got signatures, and won the Republican primary over Tanner Ainge and Chris Herrod. The race had one of the worst ads that I've ever heard in my life from Chris Herrod when it was either a robocall or an ad where it said, "Hi, I'm Chris Herrod," like Herod from the Bible. Probably not the guy you want to compare yourself to. But John Curtis won that one. He was not expected to win, and that's how he got into Congress. And then when Mitt Romney decided he was not going to run for another term in 2024, there was all sorts of speculation swirling around Curtis that he was going to jump into that race. And initially, I don't think he was going to do that. I don't know what the tipping point was for him to jump into that race. But I know that Spencer Cox and his people tried like hell to keep Curtis out of that race because they were all backing Brad Wilson. And Brad Wilson had money. He spent $5 million, pretty much of his own money, $5 million, to end up like third in that primary. Again, nobody knew who Brad Wilson was. And I think that, Curtis people know who Curtis is. He appeals to a broad swath of Republicans. And let's be clear, it's going to be a Republican who more likely than not is going to be our next governor. Democrats just cannot get elected in this state in a statewide race. The last one to do it was Jan Graham. And Curtis, I think, is more acceptable than a lot of candidates out there. I think that Chaffetz is another contender because he has got name ID. He's on Fox News all the time. Henderson also has name ID. I don't know how much money she's going to have if she decides to run. And I always think that's an interesting matchup because Henderson is pretty much the reason that Chaffetz got elected in the first place. She ran his campaign the first time he ran for Congress, and he knocked off Chris Cannon. And then the fact that they might be facing off against each other. She ran to replace Chaffetz when he stepped down in 2017 and was eliminated at the convention. So I think your big three right off the bat are going to be Chaffetz, Henderson, and Curtis. And as Sam Benson reported in Politico, Curtis is going to go on a 250-mile walk by himself solo across the state to decide whether he's going to do this. Spoiler alert, he's already made up his mind. He knows what he's going to do. This 250-mile walk, it's a stunt. It's a stunt to get attention. Why? Everybody's going to be talking to him about it. And then when he gets done with it, everybody's going to want to interview him about what he thought about on this 250-mile solo walk. If he was really going to do that to decide what he was going to do, he wouldn't tell anybody about it. But he made sure that Sam Benson knew, and then everybody else knows. Why? Because it's a stunt to get his attention. Nathan Detroit had a great comment. He's watching on Twitch tonight. I think walking 250 miles in Utah in the summer is a great way to get heat stroke, not clarity on a run for governor. True. I'll agree 100% with that. But Curtis, I I am almost convinced he knows what he's going to do. Because I've been making some phone calls and I've talked to a lot of people who said that he is, while they wouldn't say he has 100% committed to it, he is seriously considering it. And why wouldn't he? As I said before, it's a free run for him. He does not have to give up his seat in the Senate. He can campaign. He's not going to lose his job. If he loses the race, he just goes back to the Senate. If he wins the race and becomes the governor, then he'll have a hand in picking his replacement. And we've gone over this before in the past. The process for replacing a senator who resigns, this is in Utah specifically, the governor doesn't get to decide by themselves who to replace them with. The law used to say it was the central committee, the state central committee, of whichever political party the previous senator belonged to. In this case, it would be a Republican. So the law used to say that the Republican State Central Committee would get to pick, I think, up to 3 names to forward to the governor, and the governor would have to pick one. The legislature changed that a few years ago. As I've explained before, it was when Orrin Hatch, when there were some thoughts that he might not finish his term at the tail end of his senatorial career, and the legislature did not want the state central committee involved in that because the kind of candidates that the Republican state central committee would send to the governor would be far different than the candidates that they would be sending to, that the candidates the legislature would send. So the new law, the change to the law says it is the legislature that chooses 3 names to send to the governor, and the governor has to pick one. It's not the Utah Senate that picks those 3 names. It's not the Utah House. It is the legislature. And if you don't think it's going to be an absolute knife fight, if there is an open Senate seat to see who gets to replace John Curtis for a year or 2 years until they have an election, we would probably have a special elect. They would probably appoint someone, and then maybe they'd serve out the last 2 years of Curtis's term, although they could have a special election later that year. Depends on when his replacement would be chosen. But it would be up to the legislature, and then Curtis, if he is elected governor, he would be in charge of that. So those are my thoughts on John Curtis running for governor. It makes all the sense in the world that he would do that. It would make all the sense in the world. Gabriel on YouTube says, doesn't become governor seem like kind of a downgrade for senator, though? Depends on what Curtis wants to do. I think Curtis, the sense that I get is he does not like the gamesmanship. He doesn't like the way things are going in Washington right now. I think he's running into some of the stuff that Romney did. Although Romney, when he was there, and I've spoken to him about this. He's written about it. It's been in books about him. He had a great time for a couple of years because he was able to form a consensus of about 10 senators on both sides of the aisle, and they got stuff done. Right now, nobody can get anything done. Curtis can't get nobody can get anything done because it all depends on what the president wants. Rather than trying to find consensus. There's no room for consensus. And that feels like a miserable way to work. I mean, sign me up for $186,000 a year for miserable work. I'd take that for a couple of years. I wouldn't mind. But it seems like it's a miserable way to live. You're not getting anything done. And so I think coming back to Utah to be the governor, that's a whole nother can of worms because you've got a legislature who thinks they are the chief among equal powers. We have co-equal powers, but they are the most co-equal, if that makes sense. So it would be another challenge for Curtis, but I think he's going to do it. There's more reasons why he should do it than why he shouldn't do it. Nathan Detroit says, hey, someone has to steal the election from Phil Lyman, so why not Curtis? Well, we have to get through the GOP primary in the 3rd Congressional District first, and the subsequent lawsuits or whatever Phil Lyman says about that. Jaden Weeks on Facebook says, I'd like him over Schultz. Yeah, this is going to be, I think the person who is probably the most upset at this news that Curtis is thinking about running for governor has got to be Mike Schultz. Mike Schultz has been trying to set himself up to run for governor for several years now. He's trying to soften his image. I reported a couple of years ago that they hired this firm called Northbound Strategies. The legislature is paying this firm, Northbound Strategies, $6,000 a month. They won't tell me what for. We don't know what they're doing. I know part of it. Part of it is to create those slick videos where Speaker Schultz is talking directly to the camera about whatever policy proposal is important to him. And the videos look good. Nobody watches them, but those are taxpayer-funded videos. They are paid for by the taxpayer. $6,000 a month for this Northbound Strategies. Oh, and by the way, they're still doing it. I was looking through some expenditure reports for the legislature, for the House and the Senate, and it's still there, chugging along like clockwork. You, the taxpayers, are paying $6,000 a month to this Northbound Strategies to do PR for a PR campaign for Speaker Schultz. I think they also produce the cookie cutter email newsletters that go out for all the Republican members of the House. The Democrats, they don't get a tap into this resource, but the Republicans do. And they all send out these email newsletters, and they're almost exactly the same. They just swap out whatever picture in the name. I think Northbound does that as well. But Schultz has been trying to up his personal profile, but the problem is nobody knows who the hell he is. And he immediately starts at a deficit. As it has been explained to me so many times by political consultants, by people who've run campaigns, you either have name ID or you spend money to get name ID. One or the other. And Curtis has name ID, and he also has the kind of money he would need to get name ID. So watch this very closely, but I think that Curtis is going to do it. There's more reasons why he would do it rather than he wouldn't do it. And he's going to have money. As I said earlier, he had a lot of funding. A lot of it came from... the name is escaping me, but there's a billionaire in North Carolina who formed a super PAC that donated a lot to John Curtis's, or donated in support of John Curtis's campaign during that senatorial primary in 2024. Jaden Week says, I love her. Is she really going to run? I'm assuming, Jaden, you're talking about Deidre Henderson. She's acting like she might be wanting to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if she did. Especially, she's generating a lot of goodwill right now with her fight against the federal government and over the voter rolls. She had a post last week that made me laugh. There was one of those lawsuits from the Justice Department trying to get a state, I forget which one, trying to get them to turn over their unredacted voter files. It was thrown out of court, and all she did on Threads was she quoted the post saying that it had been thrown out, and all she said was 0-5. 0-5. That made me laugh. And she's generating a lot of goodwill, not among the GOP base. GOP base hates her. They would like to have Phil Lyman as the governor. But among GOP voters, statewide primary voters, she's generating some goodwill. So don't count her out. Sherry Hendrickson Nichols on Facebook says, wait for governor. When is Cox up for re-election? Cox is up in 2028 and he's not going to run again. Spencer Cox said that he was only going to serve 2 terms and then he would be out. And he's got a book coming out. And a lot of people think that he's going to be running for president. I don't know if he is. If he is, personally, I think that's a fool's errand. There's a reason why Mitt Romney went to become the governor of Massachusetts after the Olympics. If you were here after the Olympics, I was covering politics at the time, and Mitt Romney could have been elected king of Utah after the Olympics. He was so wildly popular. He would have been the governor for as long as he wanted. But you don't launch a campaign for the White House from Utah. You just don't do it. Orrin Hatch tried it, I believe, in 2000. He competed. He went to the Iowa caucuses. That didn't work. And then, of course, John Huntsman tried to run in, I believe, 2012. And that didn't work. You don't try to run for president from Utah. Doesn't happen. And I just don't know if there's an opportunity for Governor Cox to run. But I think everybody who gets to that high in politics thinks that they would make a good president. Anita Dalrymple says we should have special elections for openings. We do have special elections, but they do have to fill that seat. You can't, if you remember, the special elections are in the House primarily. But in the Senate, where their terms are longer, you appoint someone, but they don't get to fill out like 4 years of the term. I think it's during the next general election. So I think whoever gets appointed, this is all hypothetical, but if Curtis does get elected governor and there's an opening, whoever gets appointed to fill that seat, I think would fill it out until the end of the term and then run as an incumbent. Let's see, looking at some of the other ones. Katie Did It on YouTube says, out of all the possible contenders you mentioned, Curtis would be the best choice. I'm not commenting on the quality of the candidacy. I'm just commenting on the built-in advantage of name ID, which is the biggest thing right now. The person with the largest name ID at this point, and we're not even in the campaign yet, but the person with the best name ID is probably going to be your front runner, and they start with an advantage. I don't know where it goes from there. You know, campaigns are long. Let's see. Looking over on Instagram, Aunt Squad says, I wonder if he'll hold any town halls across this 250-mile walk. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Relationscape says his high and low social media posts are so pathetic. I'm not going to comment on the quality of that either. Paragon, I've not talked about the data center yet. I will, but I wanted to talk about this right now because I thought it was some really good reporting by Sam Benson. Sam Benson also had another post. He did post this that said, about an hour ago, Curtis released a statement, and as Sam Benson points out, it is very carefully worded about all this hype about him possibly running for governor. And the Senate and the statement from Curtis says it is a special privilege to represent Utahns in the United States Senate. I love my work here and I am extremely grateful for it. Despite recent speculation, I am happy where I am and have not spent a minute on plans to leave this office for another. Whether as mayor, a member of the House, or now in the Senate, I've never approached public service by planning my next move. I focus on doing the job I was elected to do and doing it well. That's been my approach from the beginning, and it's exactly where my focus and energy are today. And he's right, that is very carefully worded. Because it doesn't rule anything out. If you'll remember, in 2024, there was a lot of speculation that Curtis was going to get in that race, and then then he said, I'm not going to run, and then he changed his mind. I can't really talk about why he changed his mind, but I've got some pretty good ideas on why he changed his mind. In fact, I know why he changed his mind, or I've got some good sources on that, but I really can't talk about that until I talk to a few people. So maybe on a future live stream, we can look at it. Elliot Nutter says, I kind of enjoy Deidre Henderson because she's been making MAGA mad, and I love to see them lose it. Yeah, she's sort of embraced that role. She knows that she's not going to be She's not beloved among the GOP base here in Utah, neither Spencer Cox. They didn't show up for the state convention this year. Why would they? They would just get booed. But Blake Moore, this is actually a story from the Deseret News. But Blake Moore had a very interesting idea about redistricting. I think it is hopelessly naive. And I think it's also, he is talking about this because he is getting absolutely pilloried by supporters of Carrie Ann Lisenby over his work with Better Boundaries in 2018 to put the original Prop 4 on the ballot. And they're blaming him for the new congressional map we have, which has a Democratic-leaning district centered on Salt Lake County. What he says is he thinks that all 50 governors, and I'm reading this from the Deseret News today, all 50 governors should convene in 2030 and agree to basic standards on how to draw districts in their state. I think that's hopelessly naive. I think that is so naive because in most states, it's a legislature that draws the lines, not the governor. Now, the governor could veto, but if you have a trifecta and a supermajority, it doesn't matter what the governor does. I think he just proposed that because he's trying to find a way out of this. Because I think Lisenby is scoring some points off of him by pointing out his work with Prop 4, and that might rankle some Republicans. Is it going to be enough for her to win this primary? I don't know. But this is one of the bellwether races that I am watching in this upcoming primary. Moore and Lisenby is a bellwether because it's going to test, in my mind, Republican anger over the new map, the new congressional map, and losing essentially Burgess Owens as part of the congressional delegation and trading him for what is most likely going to be a Democratic member of Congress. I think that is going to test the level of Republican anger in the state over that. I think there are a couple of other legislative bellwether races, and I've been looking at them, so I'll probably write that article in the next few days, put it on utahpolitics.news. SJ has joined us on TikTok. He says, my show is on. SJ, again, if you are on TikTok, you need to follow him, ESSJAY. I think he does a great job. His perspective is unique. I think he has things to say that are, while not always relevant to me, they are something that I can always make me think. So I appreciate his perspective. So if you are on TikTok, follow him, SJ, ESSJAY. You will not be disappointed. I like that. Let's see. Looking over some of our other comments, because you guys are really chatty tonight. This is great. I love it. I love the fact that everybody is so chatty because it gives me a lot to talk about. Gabriel on YouTube says, why not just have a national ban on gerrymandering and be done with it? The Democrats have been proposing that. But I also think that they need to start gerrymandering in response to what the Republicans are doing, because there's no incentive for the Republicans to stop doing this until the Democrats do the same thing. Because if the Democrats gerrymander in all the states where they have a trifecta, if they did that, then they would pick up more seats than the Republicans. But Republicans are doing it to try and create a structural advantage. And I think when the Virginia Supreme Court threw out the results of that redistricting vote, that may have been the moment that the Republicans saved their bacon in the United States House of Representatives. Because right now, as the gerrymandering sits, Democrats need to win the national vote by 4 points in order to take a majority in the House. And they probably need to win it by more to win in the Senate. But they need to win the national vote in 2026, the 2026 midterms, by 4 points in order to have a big enough wave to take the House. But as more Republican states gerrymander, Florida, I think the Mississippi is going to get in on it, Alabama. As they do that, as they move to drop their maps, that's going to get higher. And that number comes from Elliot Morris. He's got a great Substack, Strength in Numbers. I subscribe. You should too. He really breaks down. He's probably the best numbers guy out there when it comes to political numbers. Strength in Numbers with Elliot Morris. But he had an article this week that said the Democrats need to win the national popular vote, or win the national vote by 4% to have a chance at taking the House. Now, if you look at the polls in the generic ballot, Democrats are up by like 14 points. So that is well within reach. Let's see. Gabriel says, I suppose we'll have to see if Texas reached too far with their maps and see if it backfires. That's the game, because every election I think is different. And if you're and what Gabriel is referring to on that is when Texas redrew their maps, when they did their redistricting, they basically tried to draw them off of the numbers in 2024 when Latinos were voting for Republicans. Now that public opinion has shifted, and that's why you hear some people saying that it's a dummy mander. Not a gerrymander, but a dummy mander, because they played themselves. They did something stupid. I don't know. Anywho, looking through some of these other comments. Okay, I'm just going to say your username on Instagram because there's no way around it. I poop a lot. Lord, says, what about no woman nominations for judge? I know there were only 4 applicants, but were their qualifications really so much less than? I don't know. I'm not on that commission, but there are judges on that commission who know what they're looking for, and they're going to get another nomination after Justice Hagan stepped down last week after she was pressured by the legislature. She stepped down because, at least this is my read on it, she didn't want to get dragged through the mud as the legislature had their inquest or investigation or whatever. So they're going to have another, Spencer Cox is going to have a third nominee for the Utah Supreme Court, in addition to the 2 extra seats that they created. Let's see. SJ says, what do you think the real percentage makeup of the electorate is here in Utah? Well, if you're looking at the registration, the voter registration numbers, and I get data from a company called L2. They are kind enough to share their voter registration data with me. I have access to the voter file, and except for the private ones, which, as we all know, are going away next month. But according to them, the breakdown is about 50% Republican, about 35% independent, and about 14% Democrat. And I think that that's pretty close to what it is. We'll have a better idea once people's voter registration information is made public, and that'll be added into the voter file, and then I'll have access to that. But I think that that's pretty close. Now, the interesting thing is they've been updating their numbers for all the congressional districts, and I've been telling you that Congressional District 1, the Democratic-leaning district, is a plurality Republican district. Not anymore. Republicans and independents have flipped. Now that district is about, according to the latest numbers I've seen from L2, about 35% independent, 33.5% Republican, and about 25% Democrat. So you've seen the number of Republicans drop just a little bit, but most of them became independents, not Democrats, which again just adds to that theory. Everyone says, "Oh, you know, most of the Republicans in Salt Lake County are Democrats," and no, they're not. They're not, because you would see them coming back to the Democratic fold. They're not. They're changing their registration from Republican to independent. That's what it looks like. That's where the flow is happening. Now, for this primary that's coming up in the 1st Congressional District, as I wrote, it is an open primary. You do not have to be a registered Democrat to vote in it. You can be a Democrat, you can be an independent, you can even be a Republican. You just have to go to the county clerk and request that ballot. If you want to do that, you should probably do it sooner rather than later. They actually have a form online. You can just go to the Salt Lake County clerk. You have to live in the 1st Congressional District and request a Democratic ballot rather than a Republican ballot if you are registered as a Republican. But the sooner you do it, the better, because those ballots are coming out in the mail in just a couple of weeks. So you probably should get on it if you want to do that. Let's see. Someone says Cox will run for that Curtis Senate seat. I think that he will be a candidate, but he would. I don't know if the legislature would forward his name to the governor's office, because in the immediate aftermath, if Curtis becomes the governor and has to vacate that seat, as I've been talking about, I think that what happened in the immediate aftermath, the replacement will come from 3 names chosen by the legislature. They will forward 3 names to the governor. They don't have to be lawmakers. They just have to be Republicans. And I don't know if Spencer Cox would be one of the ones that they forward. If you gun to my head right now, I would say no, he would not be one of them. Because the allure of becoming a United States senator and then running as an incumbent in 2028 is going to be very hard to resist for a lot of lawmakers. There are a lot of people in that building who would want to become senators. And probably I would throw Mike Kennedy as someone who would want to be in the Senate. He wanted to be in the Senate when he ran against Mitt Romney in 2012. He might be one of them. Maybe Blake Moore. Who knows? I've also heard Blake Moore is a possible candidate for governor in 2028. 2028 is going to be a real knife fight, a knockdown, drag out, because it's going to be an open seat. Remember last time when Governor Herbert was not running in 2020, I believe it was a 4-way primary. Yeah. But there were a lot of people who jumped into that race, and I think you'll see the same thing again. On Squad says, do you think that there will be consequences for the people who leaked the information on Judge Hagan? Maybe. I'm not tapped into the Judicial Conduct Commission. I don't think that you can argue that that leak was not done for political purposes. That's 100% what they were trying to do. It was done to cause maximum damage to her and give Republicans something to run on. Okay, looking through some of the comments here. Anita Dalrymple says, I'm surprised Utah isn't more heavily Democratic. Republicans have evolved into a control party. Utahns have a more independent attitude in everyday life. Thoughts? The problem is most of the seats in the legislature that make up the Republican supermajority are so heavily gerrymandered that the only fight is the nomination fight. There are so many seats that a Democrat right now does not have a chance of winning because they are so heavily gerrymandered. And so I don't think it matters that they're more independent as a whole when it all comes down to the fact that Republicans have a supermajority locked in, and the people get elected to that win in the primary. And so the fight is in the primary. The fight is in the nomination, and it's whoever runs the farthest right. Moderates rarely get through those unless they are an incumbent. And that's what this whole thing about Prop 4 is about. This Prop 4 fight is not about the congressional maps. We just got the congressional maps this year. But it is not about the congressional maps. The Prop 4 fight is about the legislative maps. Because if the 75 members of the House and the 29 members of the Senate do not get to pick their own voters, then you're going to see a lot more moderates you'll see more competitive districts. You'll see moderates getting elected. It will shift everything. That's what the legislature does not want to happen. Because under Prop 4, you can't use partisan data to draw those lines, and you can't consider where an incumbent lives. You have to draw them blind. Every year, at least one incumbent gets drawn into a district with another incumbent. But usually that's done to either punish a Republican or to punish a Democrat. If you remember back in 2021, when they redrew the House of Representatives, Suzanne Harrison, a Democrat who had won in a Draper district, was drawn into the same district as a Republican, a district that she was not going to win. She was drawn into a very heavily Republican district. And they did that because she was causing waves up on the Hill, and they wanted to get her out of there. Redistricting is a huge tool for the Republican majority. And if they have to draw those lines without considering where the incumbents live and without using partisan data, you're going to see a lot of incumbents who are in safe seats, all of a sudden in seats where they're going to have to fight for their lives. And they don't want to do that. Would you? You want it easy. So that's what this whole Prop 4 fight is about. It is not about the congressional maps. It is about the state house and state senate. It is about Republicans keeping that supermajority. They have so effectively gerrymandered that they are guaranteed to keep that supermajority before anybody casts a ballot. This is the very definition of lawmakers choosing their voters rather than voters choosing their lawmakers. So I think that that's what it is. On Squad 9 on Instagram says Amendment D 2.0 is going to be brutal. I don't know when they're going to unveil that. I would think that we'll see it. I don't know if we're going to get a special session next week. I don't think that we are, or this month. So I would suspect maybe next month that they would do that, because I don't think they have interim meetings in July, and then in August they're running up against the same problem they had last time, which was the publication date. Although now that they're more cognizant of that, they could just push something through in August and not give people a lot of time to mobilize against it. And like I said, since I'm watching the Blake Moore, Carrie-Ann Lisenby primary, I think they're going to get a lot of data from that and probably a few other races to see just how angry Republican voters are about this new congressional map in Prop 4. Because if Lisenby gets stomped, I don't know how they make that to me, it's saying that they're not whipping up their base voters about the issue. If Lisenby gets stomped by Moore, loses by 30 points, I think that it's going to be really hard to make the case that Republican voters are fired up about the Prop 4 issue, because that's her issue right now with Blake Moore. But if she comes within 10 points or even wins, then, as Dan Rather would say, Nellie, bar the door. On Squad says GOP is polling on Amendment D. Really? If you have any information on that, my DMs are open. I'd love to hear from you about that. Vern Hill says, how can we support your work? I appreciate it, Vern. Thank you very much. The easiest way to do it is to go to utahpolitics.news. As I said, I'm going to go into my spiel here. I am an independent journalist. I run Utah Political Watch. It's utahpolitics.news. That website is journalist-owned, journalist-operated. What journalist? You're looking at him. It's me. No corporations, no billionaires, nobody telling me what I can write. If you go to utahpolitics.news, you can sign up. You can subscribe for free. You'll get most of my journalism sent to your inbox for free. But if you want to support what I do, you can become a paying subscriber. It's like $5 a month, $55 a year. or you can throw some money in the tip jar if you don't want to be a subscriber. If you become a subscriber, you get a few extra things. And I appreciate it. I do, because the only reason that I can do this is because of you. I am supported by my readers. That's the people that I'm accountable to. I'm not accountable to advertisers. I'm not accountable to corporate interests. I don't have to worry about pissing off someone and then they're going to pull their ads. It's freeing in a way, but it's also stressful because I have to hustle to, I have to pay my bills and make sure things keep running like this. So Vern, if you want to become, if you want to support my work, that's the easiest way to do it, and I appreciate it. I would be really, I am very thankful for each and every one of you who reaches out to me with a news tip, who reaches out to become a subscriber, throws some money in the tip jar, sends me a DM saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job." All of that matters in a way that is so meaningful to me. Simply because I'm doing this pretty much alone. I'm fighting against the big boys who have a lot of staff and a lot of resources, and they're not worried about, paying for this subscription or making things work. They just do it, and I'm by myself. Let me tell you a story. This just happened today. I submitted a grammar request to a state agency, and I think it's a pretty blockbuster story. But I got an email back, and they said, in order to collect all this information, they think it would take about 12 hours of staff work, and they want to charge me $50 an hour for that staff work. Like $500, 600 bucks. It's like 10 to 12 hours and $50 an hour. I got to tell you right now, I can't afford that. I can't just go scratch a check for a minimum of $500 to get these records. Thankfully, I have another way to get them, and I have to be creative. But I think I've figured out a way to get to them. And when I write this story, you're going to be a little bit shocked by this. But that's one of the things that they are doing. They don't want to be accountable, and they know that. I'm an independent journalist. Do I have $500 out there to fund this grammar request? No, I don't. I don't know if that went into their decision making, but that certainly puts a chilling effect on what I'm trying to do. Sarah Levitt says, "What state agency?" I'm not going to tell you right now because I don't want my competitors to know what I'm working on. Because I'm following up on a news tip. I'm not trying to be cute. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. That's something I'm keeping close to the vest. When I do publish the story, you'll know, because some people are going to be squealing. Jaden Week says, "Isn't that illegal? Grandma should be free, shouldn't it?" They've changed the law, and they can charge reasonable amounts if it's going to be a lot of work. And I was asking for, they would have to dig for a lot of things. But like I said, thankfully, I'm pretty sure I've found a workaround on this. And it's some people are going to be squealing a little bit it shocked me when I started doing some rough envelope math on what this is. So I'll do that probably later this week, next week. I have so many grammar requests out. I have been spending so much time digging through budgets and transactions. I hate spreadsheets now. I hate them with a passion because I've been looking at them so deeply for the past few days for several state agencies. And there's some really interesting things that I'm finding there that are worth more reporting. And just back to supporting my work, that takes time, that takes resources. Yesterday, I literally spent from 7 a.m. until about 4:30 p.m. just looking at these spreadsheets of these transaction histories for a certain state agency. And at 4:30, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was getting a headache. But that took me all day, and now I have to dig in and try to figure out where this came from. So it's a lot of work. There's a lot of resources. But again, I'm not complaining because I'm so thankful that I still get to do this work. And the only way that I get to do this work is because of you, because of people who support this. And so I am not trying to be ungrateful. I am so grateful because, again, the only way that I do this work is because of you. And I'm so thankful for you. Anita Dalrymple says, our state budget's online. Yeah, they're just hard to find things to dig into. Gabriel on YouTube says, any idea when we can expect to see that story? As soon as I write it, I just need to, again, it's going to involve a spreadsheet and digging through that spreadsheet, but just back of them, trust me, it's going to be worth it. Okay, a few people have been asking this, and so we're going to do it. We're going to talk a little about the data center, the latest on the data center up in Box Elder County, the project with MIDA. As you know, last week I reported that 5 companies that are financially dependent on MIDA gave $135,000 to Senate President Stuart Adams' PAC, his leadership PAC, just 5 days, just a week after MIDA voted to approve that project. These 5 companies were involved with other MIDA projects, but they were the 5 largest checks in the history of his PAC. And this PAC has also been funneling money into his campaign because he's got a really tough re-election bid, a 3-way primary. I reported that last week, and there's been some other good reporting as well. There's been a lot of emails, and there's a lot of scrutiny happening right now around this deal, which is great. You know, I see other news agencies getting great scoops, and while part of me is like, I wish I would have gotten that, also I'm like, good, people need to be looking into this, and you should be rooting for that too, because more news is better. More news is better. More eyes, more scrutiny. And the thing that is really sticking out to me is they don't like it. And you can tell they don't like it because Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, the person behind this, he has been losing his ever-loving mind over the pushback. He's not used to this at all. He has said that the protesters were bussed in from out of state, which is, pardon my French, complete bullshit. That is total bullshit. And he knows it. But what else are you going to say? People hate this thing that I want to do that's going to make me a bunch of money? But then he also attacked Elevate Utah, suggesting that they were agents of the Chinese government. Talk about flailing. This is a guy who is flailing. Did you see the hat he wore on CNN last night that said, a black hat with gold lettering that said Utah Military Security or something? Stupid. But they don't know how to sell this thing to a public that is, to put it mildly, deeply skeptical of what they're going to do there. And a lot of people don't want it. And they don't know how to handle it. And it is really upsetting them. They're not used to this level of scrutiny. They're not used to this level of pushback. You probably saw it on the on YouTube and Facebook, but my dog Murphy just came in to check on me. Murphy is I don't know if you've been following it, but Murphy, she's my best friend, but she's been having some health problems. Late last year, she had some cancer, a very large mass in her nose that had to be taken out. We gave her radiation, but the mass had started to invade her skull and her brain. And they told us that one of the things that would happen is she would have seizures, and she's been having some seizures. And over the weekend, it was a really rough weekend because she had some seizures and had to take her to the hospital, and she spent the night in the hospital and adjust her meds. She's better now, but that was a really tough emotional weekend. But she likes to come in at this time of night just to get some comfort. So she's here getting some pets. She's a good girl. She's the best girl. She's been my best friend for Christ, I think she's just turned 11. A really tough. It was a tough weekend with her. So, anyway, we're just holding on. Very thankful that she's still here and we get some more time with her. She's a good girl. So, anyway, I'm going to try to multitask and give her some comfort while I talk to y'all. Okay, back onto this. Let's see. Someone says there's Cable Ascani 441 on TikTok says there's just too much misinformation too. Yeah, the biggest one, and this is the one that's really bugging me. There's a woman who has racked up thousands upon thousands of views on TikTok and Instagram with a video about how she's claiming that Governor Spencer Cox he's set to personally benefit from this data center. She doesn't know. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. If you listen to that video, it's just straight up the result of an AI search. That's all it is. And then she just turned it into a video. But she's racking up thousands of views, and lots of people who are casually following this see that content and they get upset, but she has nothing to back it up. Nothing at all. I can't go on and report that because I would get sued. That's one of the reasons why I have to carry a $2 million insurance policy in case of libel or misappropriation or whatever. I'm extremely careful, but I have to have that because I'm a serious business. She's just a creator on Instagram. But this thing is spreading virally. I try to push back against it. I know I shouldn't. I should engage. But it just rubs me the wrong way because she does not know what the hell she's talking about. But she has this video claiming that Cox is set to personally benefit. Anyway, so dumb. So yeah, I think that the story right now, you saw that Spencer Cox is talking about scaling it back. He's also really smarting about the pushback on this because I think he's getting ready for the publication of his book. That's going to be Spencer Time. Spencer Time in America. Spencer Cox on his book tour. You know, Spencer getting all that attention. But at the same time, he's got this data center that people are really mad about. And he knows he's going to get asked about it. So he's probably trying to figure out a way to get out of it. Lisa Veweg on Instagram says, who does stand to personally benefit other than O'Leary? We don't know right now. There are no contracts. The landowners, I think, either have sold or leased the private land. But right now, the big beneficiary is Kevin O'Leary. I don't even think they have a tenant for this data center. I've been trying to find that. I can't find anything. I don't think that they have a tenant. And you kind of need a tenant before you that's how you unlock the capital to build the thing, because there's going to be capital. Obs on TikTok says, I think they absolutely know. I've talked to people in the data center space and they don't know. What they should have done is they would have come out and said, we want to build this data center and here's who's going to be using it. But they didn't say who's going to be using it. Here's who's going to be using it. To me, that's a giant red flag that they may not have all of their ducks in a row and they're just trying to do this and then get a tenant later. Obs on TikTok says the government wants to make autonomous weapons. Sure, but who is going to be using the data center? Is it going to be OpenAI? I know people who have worked with OpenAI. They're saying, not us. Oracle AI, not us. They don't, from what I can tell, they don't have somebody lined up yet in this. SJ says, all they said is military concern or national security, right? That's how they got the military land, because it was MIDA, MIDA is the group, and they help develop or finance infrastructure on these military lands. and it has to be some benefit for the military. They're building super high-end hotels in Deer Valley through MIDA, and the benefit is that they would, the benefit is that the military gets a discount when they stay there. Military members and veterans. But meanwhile, they're building this incredibly luxury hotel. Elliot Nutter says, I hope Elevate Utah / Alliance for a Better Utah go on CNN or such to respond to Kevin's madness. That would be fun. I can't watch that show. I just can't. It's such a train wreck. When I was younger, I used to love train wrecks. When I was in college, I watched the McLaughlin Group so religiously. I never missed it. I actually started when I was in high school. So you can tell I was real popular with the ladies growing up. But I loved it. I've been a political junkie almost my entire life. I tell people that one of my earliest formative memories was sitting in my grandmother's living room in Colorado, in northeastern Colorado, watching the 1972 Democratic and Republican conventions when they were on TV, 3 broadcast networks, and they were on TV all day long. My grandmother had a big black and white TV, a giant black and white TV, and we would just watch that. The color TV was downstairs, and that was for watching Lawrence Welk, and we never went down there. But the black and white TV was upstairs while she was doing housework, and we watched the conventions. But I remember that, as I said, that's one of my earliest formative memories. Jaden Weeks on Facebook asks, what's with all these China data center race claims? We have above and beyond the most data center internationally. It's ridiculous. I really can't speak to that with any sort of authority other than the fact that it's a scare tactic, maybe a way to sell things. And don't forget, I mean, the Trump administration, not only the Trump administration, but the Trump family, they are very invested in AI. They have a lot of financial stake in AI. So that's probably where a lot of this is coming from as well. So, any other thoughts, any other questions? We can talk about that. Just leave them in the chat and I will get to them as quickly as possible. Also, very interesting story today that Salt Lake City Council member Ava Lopez Chavez is no more a councilwoman. She bought a house outside of the district, listed it as her primary residence. Can't do that. The rules for Salt Lake City Council say you have to live in the district, and so that seat was vacated. Much like the seat was vacated in 2023 after Amy Fowler was, I believe it was 2023, had a DUI and had to resign. So now the council will pick a replacement from a number of applicants. I don't think anybody was really surprised after that story broke that she did not live in the district. It was pretty cut and dried. Although I saw some of the dum-dums on Twitter trying to say, well, you know, she got kicked out because she doesn't live in the district, but Blake Moore, he doesn't live in the second district where he's running. Well, there's 2 different sets of rules. You don't have to live in the district when you're running for Congress. And if you were worried about that, maybe you should have done something about Burgess Owens and Jason Chaffetz when they didn't live in the district when they ran. So it's kind of hard to do that. Jaden Weeks says, why can't we make that a rule for federal races? Blake Moore has never lived in our district. There's no law. The only law for members of Congress is you have to be a resident of the state at the time you are elected. That's it. So you'd have to probably change that on a federal level. And as I've explained before, when Jason Chaffetz did this, when he was first elected after he ousted Chris Cannon, he did not live in the district. And then eventually when they redrew the lines in 2011, he it was 2001. Sorry, 2011 is when we got the 4 seats. 2001, they drew the line so that he would be in the district. And at the time, Chaffetz was like only the third person ever to not live in the district that they represented. But now it's pretty commonplace. There are now like 30 or maybe even 40 members of Congress who don't live in the district. So it's become much more commonplace. And I don't think you're going to see Congress change that rule to neuter themselves. Sherry Hendrickson Nichols on Facebook says Gerald Ford was my first vote. Yeah, my grandmother growing up, she was a blue dog Democrat. She also had an ongoing fight with her neighbor over whether you pronounced the name Roosevelt or Roosevelt. She grew up in Nebraska, and she said Roosevelt. Nebraska and Iowa, so that's why she said Roosevelt. Nathan Detroit says, curse you, supremacy clause, you bested me again. Exactly. I can just imagine them shaking their fists. Let's see, any other comments here? Imageworthy on Instagram says, investors O'Leary not funding the whole project, he would go broke. Yeah, he's not funding the whole project. There's no way he's funding this. But like I said, there are things that have to happen in order to fund this project. And to me, it is extremely curious that they did not announce who was going to be using this data center. And also remember, they're going to have to get the chips for this thing. This thing is years away from happening. Imageworthy says Deer Valley has a lease with MIDA. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The Deer Valley East Village is a MIDA project, or it's in MIDA area. So MIDA gives the developer, Extel Corporation, they give them tax breaks. They fund infrastructure that is paid back through bonds and tourism. And that's why they're building these luxury condos and a luxury hotel as a quote unquote benefit for the military. That's not the original scope of what MIDA did. It was formed in 2007 to try and, help develop some of these military lands, but one could argue that they have just gone way beyond what they were supposed to be doing. It's not hard to make that argument. Old Steve Mart 1230 on Instagram says, where did Malloy live when she got elected? She actually lived in the district. Now, I think the question you're asking is, where did she live when she filed to run? And everything told us that was probably in Virginia when she was working in Chris Stewart's office. Because Utah law says in order to file to run, you need to be a registered voter in the state. And she was not a registered voter. Her registration was in the process of being purged from the voter rolls. And when people challenged that, in fact, at the time, Lieutenant Governor Henderson knew it was a problem because her office contacted Malloy and said, you're not a registered voter, and told her to register. So they knew it was a problem. So technically, it was fought in court, but if you went by the letter of the law, Malloy should not have been allowed to file to run in that race because she was living in Virginia at the time. SJ writes, any news on the water situation in and outside Utah? What's being done? It's bad. It's really bad. We didn't get the snow that we needed. I'm going to be a guest on Katie Fang's podcast, her YouTube show. We're taping tomorrow, and I think it'll be released tomorrow afternoon. I'll send a link out when it's on there. But we're going to be talking about the data center in MIDA. And she mentioned that she spends a lot of time in Utah. When she came out here this year with her family, there was no snow. And as alarming as it is for them who are trying to vacation here, us who live here, I keep saying this: we are in for a life altering summer, a potentially life altering summer. It was 90 something here today in Utah. I had to turn on the air conditioner. Luckily, my house has a lot of solar, and we've got a solar battery, and so we don't pull as much from the grid as our neighbors do. It's kind of satisfying when I look at my power meter and, we charge up the batteries during the day, and then at night they, just slowly drain down, and we don't get below our reserves, and then they start to charge up in the summer again. I remember when we put this system in, my cousin was talking to me, and he said, well, what's the break even on this? And I said, that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is we want to be able to have power, and we don't want to be pulling from the grid so much. And fortunately, we were in a position where we could do that. But I think it's one of the best things that we've done with our property here. I'm pretty excited about that. Let's see. Katie Did It says, Box Elder site isn't the only one of the site, like Duchesne and Beaver counties. There may be more places. People aren't happy there either. How are they being financed, private or public funds? I think one of the outrages about MIDA, the one up in Box Elder, is the way it has been shoved through the process, and they're using this really obscure state agency to try and do it, and really not allowing for a lot of public input on it, just essentially saying this is going to happen, so get on board or get out of the way. And so that's what makes the Box Elder site unique. Yes, there are other data centers. And as we've seen, the communities where these data centers go in, the quality of life goes down, pollution goes up, heat goes off. I think the thing that has captured the Box Elder, the imagination with the Box Elder site, is the size. It is so big. And when they say 40,000 acres, that's not going to be the size of the building. That's the size of the dirt. That's the size of the campus. But if you look at the light pollution that comes from them, the heat, the water that they use, the energy that they use, there's a lot of pushback. And the people who are living in these communities are suffering a lot of detrimental effects, and they're pushing back. And that's why you're seeing a lot of foot stamping on this part of Kevin O'Leary and other people who are supportive of this, because they are used to getting their way and they don't like it. Anita Dalrymple adds, location near the lake. Sure, that's another thing. And the fact that we keep hearing, we need to save the Great Salt Lake. We need to save the Great Salt Lake. And then they do this. It's wild. It is just so tone deaf. SJ says he's letting his lawn die currently. Yeah. Again, another thing about my property is we get secondary water that comes, it's an irrigation canal that comes through our property that we're able to draw from. And a couple of years ago, we dug a gigantic hole and put a 1,000-gallon tank in our backyard to have a reserve for this water that we use for gardening and plants and things. Again, it wasn't cheap, but I think in the long run, it's going to pay off for us. So, Utah Grit says, Governor Cox made some promises on social media around the data center. Nothing is binding. Why not hold a special session to address this and get teeth in his promises? They held two regarding the maps. That makes, I hear you, but you have to, it comes down to an issue of local control and MIDA, which is this independent state agency that pretty much does what it wants, and it's run by Stuart Adams. Why would Senator Stuart Adams, who has this state agency where he can do pretty much anything he wants, then put it up for a vote at the legislature where people can come and yell at them about it? Why would you do that? I see what you're saying, but the political reality is they're not going to do that. And they made the Box Elder County commissioners, they're the ones who took the heat over it. They were the ones who got yelled at. Jaden Weeks asks, anyone else wonder why Cox freaked out so much at the pushback? I've never seen him so weird. He's not used to it. He's not used to the pushback, and I think that they severely miscalculated on this one. Because they love to talk about how Utah's great for business and our economy is growing and this is going to add so many jobs. And I think that they didn't read the room. And I think that they misjudged what the pushback was going to be. So, Gabriel on YouTube asks, why are the county commissioners going for it, though? One would think it's an easy campaign win given the public outcry. The way that I understand it is, if they did it, if they voted against it, it was going to happen anyway. And they, by voting for it, it gave them at least some local oversight. At least that's the way that I understand this. That they were told it's going to happen anyway. And if you don't approve this, we're just going to find another way to do it. So it was going to be rushed through. And I think these county commissioners, not defending them, but I think their backs were against the wall. And it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And they were being challenged by their only challengers in the primary election are Republican challengers. There's no Democrats in that race. So I think it was a political calculation, although I can't say for sure. Someone says they should fight back. The problem is the state, President Stuart Adams, the legislature, has so many ways to punish Box Elder County for not going along with this. They have so many ways to retaliate. Cutting funding. They did it. They used to do it to Salt Lake City all the time when Rocky Anderson was the mayor. And Rocky Anderson was suing over the Legacy Highway. Oh, they love to punish him over that, and they still do it to Salt Lake City. And so there are so many things that the state can do in terms of budget, withholding funds, funding projects. That there's so many things that they can do that I think there was a lot more incentive to vote for it than to push back against it. But again, that would take political courage, and everywhere political courage is in such short supply. It is in such short supply. Utah Grit says commissioners could only make the best deal they could at that point in time. Sad that they took the hit. Yeah, they're the ones whose backs were against the wall. So, okay, so we've talked about John Curtis possibly running for governor. And to recap, I think he's going to do it. It makes sense that he would do it. There are so many, again, there are more reasons why he would do it rather than he wouldn't do it. He says he's going to make this 250-mile walk solo across the state to think about it. I think he's already made up his mind, and I think he's going to do it. And as I said before, he's got name recognition. I think he immediately is the front runner, and it's really hard to knock someone off that front runner status. He's got a bigger bully pulpit than Speaker Mike Schultz. Jason Chaffetz is on Fox News, but again, that's a limited audience. He's got a bigger bully pulpit than Deidre Henderson. He immediately becomes a formidable opponent. I'm not going to say he's going to win, but I'm saying that he immediately becomes the front runner. And the campaign finance rules here in Utah are frankly a joke, because you can take as much money as you want. You can take as much money from anybody. So he's not going to be hurting for money. The federal rules are much tighter, but the state rules are extremely lax. So I think he'll do it. I don't see why he wouldn't. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about Blake Moore and his idea to have all 50 governors come together and pick standards for redistricting. I think that that's kind of woefully not naive. There's no incentive to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And we also talked a little about the data center. I wrote a story this morning, and I wanted to go over this. If you hadn't seen it, I want to talk about it a little bit because it is a strange story. People have been talking about Phil Lyman in the chat, but it is a really, really strange story about Michael Clara, who's running for state school board, was running for state school board in state school board District 5. So Michael Clara, he won the Republican nomination to run against Democratic incumbent Sarah Reel. But he dropped out of the race last week. He withdrew because he claimed that the county party, the Salt Lake County Republican Party, was kneecapping him. He said that he was trying to access some resources that candidates can, usually voter lists, contact lists, fundraising lists, things along those lines, emails, addresses. They can send out mailers. And he said he was blocked from it. Well, that's not true. But he said he was blocked from it, and then he went on Facebook to say that he was being kneecapped by the county party, and so he was going to withdraw from the race. And he posted part of a screenshot, or he posted a screenshot of an email from County Chairman Mike Carey, in which Carey said, when you spend more time trolling the party, Facebook page, or party volunteers with half-truths and slanderous claims, you shouldn't be surprised by the removal or a referral to the ethics committee. Now, it sounds like that when he says you shouldn't be surprised by the removal. That sure sounds like he was not allowed to access party resources. That's not the case. I spoke with Mike Carey, and he shared some communications with me. What happened was Michael Clara was having some trouble logging in, and he got some assistance, and he was able to access those resources. What this was about whether Michael Clara could post on the county party Facebook page. He was trying to tag the Salt Lake County GOP's Facebook page, either tag it or post there directly. And he had been banned because he tends to attack party leadership on social media. He is a close ally of Phil Lyman. He is one of the people who spreads these falsehoods, these fact-free claims by Lyman that Spencer Cox was not legitimately on the primary ballot for governor in 2024. Michael Clara is one of the people who's doing that. And so he spends a lot of time attacking party leadership. So he was banned from the Facebook page and he couldn't tag it. So that's what the removal was. So this all comes down to the fact that Michael Clara dropped out of the race after winning the nomination because of a fight over access to the county party Facebook page. It is so weird. Now, the county party does get to pick a replacement. Under state law, he withdrew from the race. It's before the actual certification of the November ballot, which happens on the last part of August. So the county party has until August to pick a replacement candidate to run against Sarah Reel. She's an overwhelming favorite to win. That's a very Democratic district. But it's so strange to just drop out of the race, to quit a race because you're having a fight over access to the Facebook page. Utah Gret says, you know what he did / said that caused the party to punish him? Thought he was facing a suspension to access. No, he was given access to the party data that all candidates get. But he was suspended from posting the Facebook page because of what he was posting online. And if you go on his Facebook page or on his social media, it's a constant attacks on county party chair Mike Carey, on party leadership, attacking them. And that's not the kind of thing that they want on their Facebook page, which makes sense. So they had blocked him from doing that. Now, they said in this email, it also said that there's like an ethics investigation. Mike Carey would not comment on that when I was talking to him about that. But that's the story. The actual story is that this was over access to the Facebook page. And it's just so weird. Anyway, well, that's probably going to bring us to the end of tonight's live stream. Unless anybody has anything else that they want to talk about, just leave that in the chat as we're coming to the end. I've really appreciated all your input tonight. Everybody's been really chatty tonight, and that is great. I really appreciate that. Makes these a lot easier. And I like doing this because it's an opportunity to come on and address some of the questions that you have and help you understand what is actually happening with your government, because the people who make these decisions, they deserve to have questions asked. Now, they're not going to answer it. I don't know if they're going to answer those questions, but those questions do need to be asked. And in a lot of cases, specifically Senate President Stuart Adams, they're not going to answer my questions. But anyway, again, thank you so much for your time and your attention. This is my spiel. This is my pitch, because I am an independent journalist. This is my full-time job. I run a website, Utah Political Watch. It's at utahpolitics.news. I'm responsible for all the content. This is my full-time job, and I intend to keep doing it as long as I can. And I'm very thankful that I can. But there's no corporation that owns Utah Political Watch. Well, there is a corporation. It's me. I did form a corporation, but it's just me. It's journalist-owned, journalist-operated, and we are funded by our readers, people who throw money in the tip jar or become a subscriber. And you can do that by just going to utahpolitics.news. Sign up for my newsletter. It's free. Just give your email there. You'll get most of my journalism for free. But if you appreciate what I do, if you want to help me continue what I'm doing, you can become a subscriber. It's $5 a month, $55 a year, 17 cents a day is what that works out to. Or if you don't want a subscription, you can throw some money in the tip jar. Every little bit helps, and I'm so thankful for all of it. I'm thankful for our free subscribers. I'm thankful for the people who support this financially. Evan Dunn, who is running for state Senate in Senate District 13 in this three-way primary for the Democratic primary, writes, is there anything people can do to help you get your press credential back at the legislature? We might hear something any day, is what I'm guessing. We had oral arguments in front of the 10th Circuit Court in Denver back in March, and my lawyers were telling me that the time frame for a decision is usually 2 to 3 months. So we're in that 2-month time frame. So it's in this any time. And they felt really good about the arguments. They feel like there's a very good chance that the decision of the judge here in Utah dismissing the case could be reversed, and then we get another shot at it. So as soon as I know something, everybody else is going to know something. Jaden Weeks does ask a good question. Can John Curtis move federal PAC and his own campaign money to run for governor? He can move federal money. He can donate federal money to a state campaign, but you cannot move state money to a federal campaign. So if he wanted to donate some of his federal money to the state campaign, he's allowed to do that. But you cannot move state money to a federal campaign. Nate Bluen he didn't get in trouble, but he did do a little bit of a no-no when he first ran, because he tried to move, and I think it was just because he was unaware of the rules, but he tried to move some money from some of his state PACs that he was in control of to his federal campaign. The moment he realized he wasn't allowed to do that, he refunded it. So no harm, no foul. He didn't get to spend the money. But no, the money can only go one way. It can only go from federal down to state. It can't go back up to federal. That's why, you look at how much money Governor Cox is raising for his campaign account. He raises hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, but you have to wonder what he's going to use that for, because he cannot move that to a federal campaign if he were to run for Senate or president or whatever. Not allowed to do it. He's got an idea of what he wants to do with it, but I don't know what it is. So anyway, we're at the end of time. I'm going to edit this tomorrow, put it out as a podcast. The podcast name is Special Session with Brian Schott. You can find it there. Subscribe to that, and you'll be able to listen to this discussion. Just do some light editing, and then I'll put it out as a podcast for you tomorrow. But thanks again, everybody, for your time and your attention and your support. It means the world to me. I do this because of you, and I do this for you. And I don't take that into I don't take that for granted at all. But again, thanks again for your time and your attention. I hope you all have a great evening, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. Stay safe, y'all. Bye.